for any business owner or founder or even a kind of middle tier rising leader, one of the challenges that y'all face is this question of what's actually going on. You get lots of like, it's the end of this era and the beginning of this era, and this is the new AI era, and this is the right. All of this sort of labeling and trying to make sense of the world that we're in. And what it fails to do is to actually think about the underlying systems of the work that you're doing and how those systems are actually contributing or not contributing to your sense of feeling stuck or whether what you're doing is moving forward or not. And since my work has always been grounded in the actual growth of ventures, when I started really breaking apart and putting back together, what's the fundamentals of why things are as trust broken as they are? What I was interested in is really resistant and structural systems that produce consistent challenges and often outcomes nobody wants. And so what I thought I'd do today is to take you through that. Now, you can find this in chapter 3 of my book, The Damn Rules, but we'll go a little bit deeper into it today. And by going a little bit deeper into it, hopefully you get a sense for sort of what to watch for. And it should move us out of this kind of reactive, witch hunting, people who use AI are evil, people who don't use AI are stuck in the past, Luddites, name calling, etc. When what we're really looking at is that a system is resilient. And a system is sort of like a game. It's got a set of rules. And so if we live by those rules, then we are going to produce the outcomes that the game is designed for. If we live by a different set of rules, then we're going to produce the outcomes that that game is designed for, more or less. And so the book is written from the vantage point of really two competing games, an extractive game and an expansive game. And I want to take you a little bit through that today. So we're going to start with the extractive game. And extractive is quite literally the name for it because that is what it in fact does. And in the extractive game, we start at the production layer. So how the business makes things is really what we mean by production layer. So it's kind of where the value comes from, so to speak. And in an extractive system, the value comes from the business sort of taking ownership or taking access to something that nobody should be able to own. So you look at my little drawing here. So for example, you've got the little oil derrick, right? The oil barons were the original extractive system, maybe not the original, but certainly one of the biggest. And then Facebook, right? Extracting data, you charging and controlling for access to that data. The thing to recognize at that production layer is there's a couple of things that it's always missing. One is that it's missing attachment. An extractive system has no attachment to its customer. It doesn't derive meaning from it. It's not connected to it. It's not built for a particular customer. It's built because like, hey, we made a thing. Wouldn't you like to buy it? It also lacks context. So the thing that is made, the system that is made, right, is sort of contextless. So when you think about pulling the oil out of the ground, it wasn't like, oh, here's all the problems we're going to solve for with this oil. Here's the very specific use cases for this oil. It's, hey, we have this stuff. What could we sell it for? And similarly, Facebook had a similar phenomenon, right? We have all this data. What could we sell it for? Well, that moves us into an operations layer. And that operations layer is really built for rent seeking. So again, not ownership. They don't own the data really. It is consistently and necessarily ongoing extracted from the people that are on their platform. And now we have to build an operations layer to sort of control for that rent seeking. So the Rockefellers own the railroads and the pipelines and the power grids and all of the things that necessitated the oil. Right? So if they owned the entire system by which this stuff was distributed, then they could control for a constant stream of revenue. That, of course, eliminates choice. It eliminates competition. It also eliminates human agency. And as you see in the current extractive systems, more and more, that's the result that we get. Well, eventually resistance builds up to this. Sort of normal human communities go, hey, this sucks. There's labor resistance, there's cultural resistance, there's media resistance. And so extractive games have to be increasingly dependent on a certain kind of relationship layer. And that relationship layer is really about manipulation and narrative control. So they control the story. So, for example, you hear a lot of people going, well, it's all about storytelling, it's all about storytelling, it's all about storytelling. Well, of course, OpenAI would agree that it's all about storytelling. Anthropic would agree that it's all about storytelling. Because if you can control the narrative and you can control the people who control the narrative, which is usually politics and media, then you can maintain monopolistic control, which is a lot of what's happening when we're running an extractive game. Now, by contrast, we want to offer the expansive game. And the expansive game is cool because it starts first and foremost in reverse. It starts at the relationship layer. And by starting at the relationship layer, it is designed to follow the organic, natural, resilient rhythms that have built communities and opportunities and growth and societies for tens of thousands of years. It starts with attachment. That a founder or a business looks around and goes, hey, I like these people. I know these people. I'm connected to them. I have meaning for them. I know their context. I have specificity around these people. It's not some vague internet-based avatar. It is a specific group of people bound by relationship, connected to in relational ways. And from that, then you are building to serve those people, right? And so then the energizing force becomes value creation. Now, with value creation, we're really looking to then move to the operations layer. And at the operations layer, we do a completely different thing that we're doing in extraction. If you remember in extraction, we're trying to control access, to unify, to monopolize. In an operations layer, we're trying to expand ownership, right? We want networks. We want partnerships. We want more opportunity. We want other people doing very specific, interesting things. And we want to give customers more choices, not just more choices within our own offering, but more choices in the marketplace, other places for success to happen. We want markets to grow because then customers benefit from the overall pie getting bigger. That's how we operate. That operations layer then becomes a rising tide, which produces markets and cultures and categories that are good for everybody. That becomes a trust-making motion, right? The more that the operations of the business ultimately serve a larger and larger pool of people, and some of that has a lot to do with the way you organize the ownership and the capital structures of that business, then the more we can move to a production layer, which is how do we make good? How do we produce offers? How do we produce customer experiences? How is there a journey where someone has a little bit of trust and they get a little bit of value and a little bit more trust and a little bit more value? And as they move through their relationship with the organization, they become more and more connected in a relationship way, not in a I guess I got to deal with these people way because they won't let me out. I can't find the unsubscribe button, but in a way that says this relationship matters and I want more of it. So this comparison between expansive and extraction isn't really about whether the leaders are moral or immoral, or whether they use certain technologies or don't use certain technologies. The reason why our late stage technologies, our current stage technologies, are such a good example of extraction is because they are an evolution of an extractive process that goes back decades. It's not because technology is inherently extractive. It doesn't have to be, right? There's some beautiful, brilliant uses of AI, for example, that could be incredibly generative if we layer them in the right way. If we started with relationships and we started with context and we started with specificity. But that's not how things were built. The AI layer was built on top of the social media layer, which was on top of the broken internet layer that has already started to decay and taken to monopolistic control. So what I want you to think about as you're noticing your own business and your own opportunities out there is we're not looking for a on-off switch of like, oh, I'm expansive, oh, I'm extractive, because these networks, these systems, these games are all around us everywhere we look. The question is, what are we building into? And when we're building into extraction, we build increasing infrastructure and fragility, right? It gets bigger, more complicated, more rigid, and more collapsible. And that's what we're seeing with these big hyperscaling technology systems. Their fragility is showing. When we're building in a trust-making, expansive way, right, we are building resilience because we're building from the bottom up. We're building from relationships first. And those relationships then drive value creation, then drive operations, then drive systems that eventually produce value and deliver that value through production, through offers and services and products and all the things that come out of it. But we hold those offers and services and products quite loosely because they're there to serve the relationships, not the other way around. And that's how expansive businesses are built. Again, it's important to recognize that in the process that there are decisions that have to be made about organizing principles, how capital is allocated. All these things impact whether something can be more expansive or less expansive. But at the end of the day, if we are going to turn the tide on the crushing, trust broken way that things are being run, it's not about trying to fix the old system. It's not trying to tweak digital marketing or trying to tweak the internet or trying to fix the right way to use AI, all of these sort of moralizing ways. What we're really looking at is fundamental systems, and broken, extractive, hyper engineered systems that have been built over decades don't get fixed, they fall apart. They eventually collapse into themselves. And so the solution isn't fixing it. The solution is planting and growing something new. The solution isn't trying to hyper-engineer what is already over-engineered. The solution is looking inside what you're building and going, how do we build something new? How do we run in a different way? And sometimes that open field creates too many questions, which is why you go back to relationship. You go back to specific people in a specific context that you have specific attachment to, and then we build for their particular experience. When we start from attachment and not start from what can I pull up out of the ground and hope somebody will sell, we get a completely different result. And that's the fundamental difference between an expansive and an extractive game. As you learn those differences, you start to recognize it and you realize, oh, it's not beneficial to point fingers and go, that's expansive, that's extractive. I'm an expert at labeling things. What we want to do is we want to look inside ourselves and go from what I'm building and the choices I'm making. How are my choices leading to more expansive options moving forward? How am I planting seeds in a way that goes from relationship to operations to production, not the other way around? And then we start to learn to grow and work from a systems lens. And that systems lens becomes the solution for thinking about almost every layer of the business.